Hi, this is Joshua Kulp for Daf Shui. We are learning Daf Yud Bet of Masechet Avodah Zarah, and I wanted to talk about the Mishnah on the bottom of Yud Bet and the Amoraic Perush on that Mishnah in the Bavli. As I've said a couple times as we've been learning this Masechet, my co-author and I, Jason Rogoff, have written up a chapter about this for our forthcoming, it may take a while, book, the second volume of Reconstructing the Talmud. And this is a classic example where you can see an Amora who does not explain the Mishnah according to its simple explanation. And I'll explain that on several levels. So the Mishnah says, Ir sheyesh ba avodat kochavim, a city that has idolatry in it. And while Rashi says this is their holiday, I think that probably the more likely explanation is that there is a festival, some kind of fair, not a festival, a fair, going on in the city, and therefore there's a problem with purchasing things in the city because that would be participating in the fair. And as we said before, participating in fairs and festivals was part and parcel of idolatry, and therefore a Jew should, under certain circumstances, stay away from it. V'hayu ba chanayot mutarot, there were decorated stores, and there were non-decorated stores, she'ena mitzurot. Zehaya ma'aseh b'Beit Shan. It happened in Beit Shan, and the sages said, "Amutarot asurot." Anything that has been decorated is prohibited. V'sheina mutarot mutarot, and that anything that is not decorated is permitted. So the simple meaning of the Mishnah is that the stores that were decorated with things like wreaths for idolatry are forbidden because those stores are participating in the idolatrous fair. And the stores that are not decorated are not participating in the idolatrous fair, and therefore you can buy in them. It's quite a straightforward Mishnah. The prohibition here is that one should stay away, quite simply, from participating in idolatrous fairs, and buying at such a store would be an idolatrous act, or almost akin to an idolatrous act. But we've seen several times the sages think that this, at least the Talmud thinks that this should be directly related to providing some kind of benefit or getting some kind of benefit from idolatry. And Reish Lakish makes a very surprising statement here. He says, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Lo shanu ele mutarot bevered vehadas, tekamithane meirecha. This was only taught about a store that is decorated with a rose or with a myrtle, for the Jew participating or going into that store would benefit from the smell of the myrtle or the rose. Aval mutarot bepeirot, something that is decorated with other types of produce, mutarot. Right, you can participate, you can go into that store, even though it's clearly participating in the fair. My tama, what's the reason? You shouldn't take anything that is proscribed, prohibited, which the Gemara here interprets as nehanehu dasor. It's prohibited to derive benefit from something, aval mehaneh shari. Providing benefit, giving benefit to Avodah Zarah is permitted. Now, there are all sorts of levels of difficulties on this. First of all, let me say a difficulty content-wise. As the Tosfot and many other Rishonim point out, throughout this Masechet, we learn all over the place that it is prohibited to give benefit, provide material benefit for idolatrous events, for idolaters when they're worshiping idols, not all the time, only when they're worshiping idols, or for idolatrous structures such as an idolatrous temple. So how can you say, based on a Midrash, Reish Lakish, that it's always permitted to give benefit to idolatry? That doesn't match anything else in the Masechet. So that immediately raises some bells, some alarms with regard to Reish Lakish's statement. Had we have time here, I could compare this with the Yerushalmi, where this machloket appears between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, but in a very different form. It's clearly an echo of that earlier version of the machloket, of the dispute, but this is a much later redacted version that really changes the entire thrust of Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan's argument. And the other sort of critical mark over here are those words, Dikamithane meirecha, where he derives benefit from the smell. Those words are in Aramaic. and most of Reish Lakish's statement is in Hebrew. And whenever we see a Mora speaking in both Aramaic and in Hebrew, it doesn't mean that there's something necessarily wrong with that. It means that we should examine the situation, examine the statement to see if there was some editorial intervention here. I think that this clearly, and as we'll show in our forthcoming paper, clearly had some editorial intervention. It's part of a series of leniencies in the Bavli that really gets stretched all the way to the idea that a Jew can provide material benefit for Avodah Zarah. The only thing a Jew has to not do is directly benefit from something very, very tangible, such as the smell. Other than that, a Jew can really participate in all idolatrous fairs, festivals, things like that. Not in idolatry, you can't worship idol, but in the ancillary things from idolatrous worship and the sort of side festival, side worship, something that's not really worship but is tangential to it. It seems that the Bavli is at least pushing in the direction of getting rid of that ancient prohibition of a Jew participating at all.